People with ADHD also tend to have some trouble with executive functioning. Executive functioning are things like higher level cognitive skills, planning, organization, multitasking, understanding cause and effect, putting things into the correct order. So when you combine impulsivity and executive dysfunction together, that can sometimes cause you to act in ways that you might later regret.
Hey everybody, before we start the show, I want to make a couple disclaimers. This show does cover a wide variety of topics related to mental health and life in general, and some of those could be sensitive for you. I want to simultaneously encourage you to be brave in consuming difficult content, but also respect and recognize your limitations. So please use your best judgment. I will never be offended if you need to skip a question or an episode entirely, but feel free to feel it out, check out the episode, and just see what happens. If you need to skip, that's okay, but feel free to give it a shot first. I also need to say that while I am a psychologist, I'm not your psychologist, and I'm not your therapist. This is not intended to be direct medical advice, and you should not use this as a substitute for professional help. So with those said, let's go ahead and get into the show.
All right. Hello, friends of all varieties. This is the Hardcore Self-Help Podcast, episode 372. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Duff, aka Duff the Psych. I make mental health content for real people just like you. And today I have a question and answer episode. I have two really awesome questions from listeners like yourselves. If you would like to send me in a question for the show, which I would highly encourage, please send me an email to duffthepsych@gmail.com or head over to duffthepsych.com and use the contact form there. They both go to the same place. So today, I have a good episode here. A couple questions that are very interesting, but nothing too extreme, nothing too heavy. Just a couple really good questions. And it is also my birthday as I'm recording this, October 27th. So happy birthday to me. I am solidly in my mid-30s now, so that's fun. And today has been interesting. I started the day with a work snafu where I thought my appointment was 1 hour later than it actually was. And so I got there and I had to do all sorts of, adjustment on the fly and stuff like that. Luckily, everybody was very gracious and totally fine. Everything worked out, but I feel like I've been running around like a chicken with my head cut off all day. But tonight I get to chill. Tomorrow I'm going to have friends over and have a nice little party. One thing that we're doing for the party, which feel free to steal this idea. I think my wife came up with it, but we're going to be doing like individualized trivia. So everybody who's at the party got assigned somebody else, almost like a Secret Santa type thing. And we are all making a custom trivia quiz for that person on a topic of their choosing. So like somebody is making a quiz for my wife about Taylor Swift. Somebody's making a quiz for somebody else about 2000 celebrity pop culture, right? So like very, very hyper specific. And so we're like doing 10 questions and it should be a blast. So very excited. And thank you for joining me on another trip around the sun. Anyways, let's get into the question. There's a little bit of text here, but like I said, nothing too intense. So let me go ahead and jump into the first one. It reads, "Hi, Dr. Duff. I'm a new listener to your podcast, and I so enjoy your content. I hope you're aware of the vast impact you're having on the wellness of people around the world. It's really powerful." Thank you. Anyway, I'm currently a sophomore at my local community college. As I said before, I really enjoy your content, but some of it I find hard to relate to, since I have not yet reached major life stages your episodes often address. In other words, my whole life is being a student, not a parent, spouse, or even too much of an adult. And so I want to make a request. One of my largest struggles as a student is finding balance with work and wellness. I'm working toward a difficult field of study, and while this is important to who I am, I know I have so many other areas of my identity to grow. And so I'm encouraging you to think back on your student days and perhaps talk a little bit about how you coped and found balance as a student. Or if you didn't, how you simply made the most out of being a stressed out student. I'm not sure if you've made an episode talking about student wellness. Clearly, I need to do my research too. However, if you haven't, I guarantee you that I'm not the only student who enjoys your podcast and would greatly appreciate food for thought, specifically related to being a student. Thank you so much. All right. Well, hello. Thank you for the really thoughtful question. And I appreciate you pointing out that some of my content isn't totally relatable to you given, your age and place in life. Totally valid. And I'm happy to answer questions from a variety of ages and contexts. But Keep in mind, I do have to go off of what's sent in. So if there's other people out there who have similar feelings, please send in your questions. I'm happy to answer all sorts of stuff, but I don't make things up here. I just go off of what you send in. So thank you for this one. Your question is basically asking, how can you find a better balance between taking care of yourself and doing the hard work that comes along with being a college student in a difficult field of study? I really appreciate the self-awareness of this question. I think there's this assumption that college is supposed to be something that everybody is able to just go through easily, handle in stride, not have any significant difficulties with, but that's definitely not always the case. In college, I was a psychology departmental assistant. So I was a psychology major, which isn't surprising, and I worked for the department. And I also did therapy in graduate school with a lot of college students. So me as the therapist with a lot of college students. And then I taught students in college during that period of time when I was a teaching associate. So I can say from my own experience that there are many people out there that find themselves in a similar place of struggling with the stress and pressure that college may represent. And I can certainly relate, for my field of psychology, I knew from the start, once I figured out this is what I wanted to do, that I was going to be applying for PhD programs in clinical psychology right out of undergraduate. These are highly competitive programs and just a few people get in every year. So there was a lot of pressure there. So I knew that I needed to have a great application when the time came. So at one point in time, I did too much. I was taking a full course load as a university student. I worked as a departmental assistant. I did professional work like an outside job as a behavioral therapist with kids on the spectrum. I was president of the Psychology Honor Society, the Psychology Club, and an interdisciplinary research club. I was resident assistant. And then at the end, I was also doing an honors capstone and studying for the GRE. So that's way too much. Now that I'm older and I have kids and the kind of structure of my life has changed, I think back on that and I'm like, Jesus, that's so much. But somehow I got through it intact. Personally, I definitely had hard times in college, or there were periods of time where it was difficult. I felt burned out or emotional. But I did find a way to get through okay. I was able to maintain really good grades and I had a relationship all the way through. And I never had like a full breakdown. I never had really serious psychiatric issues. So I think I was able to get through it pretty successfully, but it was a lot. So I'll try to provide some advice from sort of a generalized perspective as well as based on my own personal experience. And maybe a few nuggets of wisdom as a guy who, finished his entire 21-year academic career about 8 years ago. And I can look back now with a more critical eye. So first things first, I think that you are already one step ahead by acknowledging just the weight of being a student. Everybody's experience is different, but I can tell from the tone of your question that you take this seriously and you feel a sense of responsibility for doing well in school and you want to do well in a difficult program. But beyond the academic challenges that come along with higher education, this is also a time in your life where you're going through a transition in your identity, your emotional development, and figuring out what it means to be an independent adult, individuating from your parents and things of that sort. And that's a lot. So I'm glad that you can recognize it's multifaceted. There's a lot of different aspects to the nature of being a student at this point in your life. One thing that made a huge difference for me in college was finding communities. And that's one of the really wonderful things about college and university is that, there's so many different people around that you can potentially connect with. Of course, you may be more extroverted, you may be more introverted, but even if this is small groups, right? I had a group of friends that were highly driven and academic, like myself. I also had friends that were just fun, and we can go play midnight basketball or Mario Kart in the projector that we had in our dorm room. I also had friends that just didn't take college quite as seriously, and they were like, hey, life is cool. You don't need to focus so much on just doing good in school. And that was a great thing to have as an influence. And so each of these different communities, they served a different purpose in my life. I could always count on one roommate that was also in the psychology program to be there in the library with me during finals week or, get pumped up with me before it was time to present our research at a poster presentation. At the same time, I had friends that helped me remember there's a lot more to life than just getting A's. So I would encourage you to look at your situation and the people that you surround yourself with. And you don't necessarily need to, kick anybody to the curb, but I would consider whether there are aspects of your identity or your development that aren't really supported by the people that you have in your network right now. And then from there, maybe you think about seeking out additional people and communities to fill in the gaps. So for example, let's say that you were like a biology pre-med major and you typically hang out with other stressed pre-med students. Maybe it'd be a really good idea for you to join an on-campus club that focuses on social issues or dance or maybe an intramural sport, something like that that's totally different than the normal type of stress you surround yourself with. I'm going to continue here, but I want to take a quick little break and talk about our sponsor today. All right, today's episode is brought to you by MindBloom. Very happy to have MindBloom on as a sponsor and a very appropriate sponsor for this episode since we're talking about things like mental health difficulties and such. So many people struggle in their life with anxiety and depression, and there's no exact answer as to what to do about that. Some people go the therapy route, some do medication, some do both. When it comes to medication, it can be a bit difficult because antidepressants don't work for everybody, and you also often have to do some trial and error. You can have side effects that aren't always fun, whether that's weight gain, feeling numb, or sexual side effects, and some people just aren't a fan of taking a daily medication for the rest of their lives. So we want other alternatives. And while there's no quick fix for anxiety and depression, sometimes you need something to help unlock your brain and get a new way of thinking about and seeing the world. And that's where at-home ketamine therapy can come in. MindBloom is the leader in at-home ketamine therapy. They've safely helped thousands of people overcome their anxiety and depression. And unlike typical talk therapy or medications, it works quickly and it doesn't have the same unpleasant side effects. In a study of over 1,200 MindBloom clients, 89% reported improvements in their anxiety and depression after only 4 sessions. So check it out right now. MindBloom is offering our listeners $100 off your first 6-session program when you sign up at mindbloom.com/Duff and use the promo code Duff. So take that first step, break free from your anxiety and depression with MindBloom. mindbloom.com/Duff and use that promo code Duff for $100 off. All right, so continuing on with the question, college is also a great time for learning more about what works for you and what doesn't. You have sort of a degree of safety net. I'm not sure if you live on campus or at home, but you have some degree of safety net for you to be able to experiment. And maybe you're starting to figure this out already, but I would love for you to pay attention to what sort of activities refill your energy, what sort of things bring you peace, and what tends to improve your mental health. Some of the things that I realized brought me peace and comfort during college included things like journaling and songwriting, skating. I would often ride my skateboard or longboard around campus in the evening time or sometimes at night. That was very peaceful for me. Exercising, playing video games, and then of course just being spontaneous with friends. And these are all things that I really enjoyed and got peace from. And college was also the first time that I started proactively taking any sort of fitness classes. And I eventually found my way into jiu-jitsu and MMA back when it was first kind of starting to get popular. And it was a big part of my life for quite a few years. So that was something that I really got into that was a helpful outside of school activity. Who knows what the best sources of peace and balance for you will be, but it's important that you embrace the opportunity and sample and try different things. Think of it as not putting all of your emotional eggs in one basket. If one class is really kicking your ass and academics are a huge source of stress, maybe there's another aspect of your life that feels really good, and you can lean into that during a hard time. And on the flip side, if things feel bad socially within one of your communities, or you're just not really doing well in your outside of school activities, you can put the blinders on and go heavy into the schoolwork, right? So you have sort of a more diversified portfolio. One of the best skills that you'll want to figure out during your time in college is how to organize yourself. In high school, things are often spelled out for you. You just sort of follow the rules and get through. During college, it's more up to you. It's more open. Nobody's going to really come after you if you don't show up for class. And if you don't turn in your assignments, it's just your grades that suffer. Therefore, you're going to want to find the best way to keep track of your to-dos and how to prioritize your tasks, keeping some sort of calendar or agenda, skills like that. And then within that organizational system, you can use it as a tool for self-care. You'll schedule in things like study, work, and homework time. And also, you'll want to schedule in time for relaxation and fun activities. And if you have a good agenda or some way of looking at what you have going on, you can take a step back and evaluate, hey, is there so much in this sort of agenda that's making me stressed out? Is there any space here for more fun activities? You can use it as a tool for self-care, like I said. It's also important for you to be honest with yourself. I think it's very easy to fall into the traps of, shoulds and musts. I've definitely been there. I felt like I had to do everything and be the best at everything, as I said from, my experience before. And that's just simply unrealistic. So instead of pushing yourself to do what you feel like you should do, regardless of the personal cost, it's important to realize that this is just one phase of your life. Nothing is worth throwing your mental health away. So if you find that you're starting to burn out or you're experiencing symptoms like really bad fatigue, irritability, hopelessness, it's time to take a step back and evaluate just how much pressure you're putting on yourself. Most universities have a counseling center or some form of mental health resources. Don't be afraid to use these, especially if they're free. You're not going to have free therapy for your whole life, and I would highly encourage you to take advantage of it while you do. Whether there's significant mental health issues or simply just wanting some perspective and support in your life, it's a totally valid option. Now, I was just thinking about it, and if I were teaching a course, like say I was at a college and I was teaching a course on self-care for college students, there's a few things I would include. So first would be a mindfulness practice. I know this might seem odd in college, maybe it's a bit played out, but starting from a younger age and developing a strong mindfulness practice can help you in so many areas, from staying grounded during exams to being a good person to talk to because you're still and present when someone's speaking to you. And even, simply when things are intense in your academic life, not letting unexpected circumstances throw you for a loop. It gives you more mental flexibility and allows you to stay present when you need to be. Next, I would talk about journaling. I mentioned this briefly already, but if you can find a journaling system that works well for you, doesn't matter what it is, but some way, either on paper, digitally, or even verbally, of getting your thoughts out. This serves as a way to keep track of your feelings, and then you can reflect on them from a more detached perspective. You can sort of be your own therapist to a certain degree. Next, I would talk about sleep hygiene. I am not one who should be passing judgment about sleep habits during college because my sleep habits were horrendous. Up until partway through graduate school, I was not a good role model for sleep. But learning about the importance of sleep and employing some simple sort of sleep strategies can help with overall energy. It helps with memory. It helps with performance on tests and even mental health. So that's one thing that, I would encourage people to do a little bit better on when it's that kind of college age. And lastly, I would focus on the management of things like social media and the flow of information on your phone and computer. In my opinion, managing the flow of information is probably one of the biggest developmental tasks of these current generations. So taking breaks from the constant comparison that's encouraged on social media may be helpful. Or keeping in mind that the things you see from other college-age people online paints a very idealized picture that's not exactly representative of reality for most people. I would encourage you to turn off most notifications and take a more intentional approach to the content that you engage with. Now, all of this said, I won't try to tell you that grades and overall performance aren't important. It sounds like for your current goals, they are. You do need to get good grades. But they're not everything. There are other ways to measure your success and your self-worth. So I think by broadening your perspective and being sure to honor the other parts of yourself in addition to your role as a student, you can find a balance that works well for you. So please remember that while many things feel massively important to you right now, they're going to feel much different down the line when you're older, when you're looking back on them. And I promise you, you're never going to regret taking good care of yourself. So thank you for the question and best of luck. Okay, before the next question, let's talk about our other sponsor today. Today's episode is also brought to you by Uncommon Goods. We are in the birthday holiday season in my household. We go my birthday and then my girlfriend's birthday. We have the holidays, Christmas, Hanukkah, etc. Then we have my son's birthday, my wife's birthday, my other son's birthday. Just birthdays, gifts, everywhere. And sometimes it's hard to think about what to get somebody. For reals. Sometimes I know this person well, but God, what the heck could I get them? And so Uncommon Goods is your secret weapon here. They're there to make your holiday shopping stress-free by scouring the globe for remarkable and really unique gifts for everybody on your list. So if you have an entire family to shop for or just a secret Santa gift for work, there are many, many awesome things on Uncommon Goods. When you go there, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses. The products are often made in small batches, and they will sell out for the holiday season. So definitely don't wait if there's something that you really want to get. They're also high quality, unique, and they're often handmade in the United States. So things from art to jewelry to kitchen to home to bar, they have something for everybody. Every purchase you make at Uncommon Goods, they give back $1 to a nonprofit partner of your choice. And to date, they've donated more than $2.5 million. So that's awesome. My favorite part of their website is they have these buttons like find me something unique, and you can click on it and get a random idea and just go from there. So check out the website, browse through. There are so many different ways to organize it and shop exactly for the person you're looking for. And when you're ready, get 15% off your next gift by going to uncommongoods.com/duff. That's uncommongoods.com/duff for 15% off. Don't miss out. It's a limited time offer, uncommongoods.com/duff. All right, and on to the second question. It reads, hello, I saw your post on Facebook, and as a follower, I'd love to ask your thoughts on the best way to help shopping addiction, which leads to huge money issues. I have anxiety and depression, which is under control at the moment, though a bit of stress and anxiety over money, and newly diagnosed adult ADD. I get paid and then anxiously pay bills, except I don't wait long enough and end up overpaying because I'm so anxious to get bills paid. Then I buy groceries, etc., and I'm overdrawn again. It's a vicious cycle as I have no support or backup. I have a therapist, I just mean in my personal life. I don't have any support. I need to learn how to control this. Would love your thoughts and anxiously in a positive way awaiting your new book. Thank you from a loyal follower in Vermont. Well, thank you for the kind words, and I'm also very anxious to get that next book out there. Just to clarify, when I'm talking about your question, you said ADD, I will be saying ADHD, which is kind of the proper terminology for it, but I think we're referring to the same thing here. But thank you for your question, and thank you for following along with the content. Your question is a really good one, and I don't think I've really covered it quite yet. So the question is basically, how does one get control over shopping addiction and money issues? Question I'm sure lots of people would like to hear the response to. Before diving into your question, I want to first recognize the improvements you've made and the hard work that you've already done. You mentioned that your depression and anxiety are generally under control, which is fantastic. You also said that you've been newly diagnosed with adult ADHD. I think this probably means that you pushed for some sort of assessment because you didn't feel like things quite add up. There was something there that didn't make sense to you, and you're looking back on your behavior and thinking, hey, I need some more help. I think a lot of people who are already adults end up just gaslighting themselves into not seeking a diagnosis because they feel like there's no point, or they feel like they're being foolish or going to be judged. So, I really appreciate your willingness to seek help and try to do what's best for you. Having a look at your question, I'm not entirely sure that you actually have what I would think of as a shopping addiction. That doesn't mean that there isn't room for improvement here or that you're not having a hard time. I'm just not sure if it fits the bill for an addiction to shopping. Of course, I'm getting a small little snippet here. There may be aspects of your situation that I'm just not privy to, so keep that in mind. But shopping addiction typically refers to this compulsive tendency to purchase items. You would have impulses to buy things that are intrusive or irresistible, meaning the thoughts like saying, okay, I really, really need to get this. And it kind of jumps in and you're like, I shouldn't, but I have to. And you often have a preoccupation with buying things, right? It's a very persistent feeling like, okay, I'm going to try not to buy anything. And then all you can think of is buying things, especially like a specific type of thing. So I would ask, for your situation, are you constantly thinking about buying things? Are you purchasing items that are unreasonable for you? Do you know that you should not buy items, but you end up doing it anyway because you feel like you just can't help yourself? If yes, these would be possible indicators that maybe you do have kind of a compulsive buying issue. However, what I'm hearing from your question is more that your money difficulties may be the result of your psychiatric and neurological symptoms. You mentioned that you're anxious to get your bills paid, so you jump the gun and end up overpaying them. To me, that sounds much less like a compulsive need to spend money and more of a gnawing anxiety and uncertainty that comes along with having unpaid bills. And so you try to resolve that anxiety by paying them as soon as you can, which is sometimes not a good idea because you don't have the money for that yet, or you haven't taken good stock of your financial situation. So it's more of like an attempt to make that anxiety go away. But then from there, you pay those bills, then you don't have quite enough money to make it through the month with groceries and other necessities that you need to buy, and you go from there. It's a rough cycle, and I can certainly empathize with what it feels like. So something needs to change for sure. But again, I'm hearing less, compulsiveness or addiction and more of just a need to get things under control with regard to organization and planning. You mentioned that you have ADHD, and there are various ways that this could also contribute to your situation. Some people with ADHD have problems with impulsivity, meaning they have a hard time holding back their immediate impulses. So for you, you may have a hard time holding on to your money and waiting till you know it's a good idea to pay a bill down instead of just impulsively going for it. People with ADHD also tend to have some trouble with executive functioning. Now, executive functioning are things like higher level cognitive skills, planning, organization, multitasking, understanding cause and effect, putting things into the correct order. So when you combine impulsivity and executive dysfunction together, that can sometimes cause you to act in ways that you might later regret. In other words, if your brain has a hard time prioritizing and seeing the big picture, and you find that there's something that seems to require your immediate attention, your ADHD may simply jump at whatever appears to be the most important thing, rather than taking a step back and planning a wise course of action. I do want to acknowledge as well that things simply aren't easy for many people right now. We live in a world that is expensive as hell, and our everyday lives are often driven by capitalism. Even as a PhD level mental health professional with several successful side gigs, I often have a hard time making ends meet. I am not comfortable financially. And that's wild when you think about it, right? So it's not just you. I would go easy on yourself for struggling with this. You're not alone. Many people fall into the cycle of money issues, then causing mental health difficulties, which then contribute to more money issues, which in turn grow your mental health struggles. It's a vicious cycle, as you mentioned. So let's talk about some practical tips. The first one is probably pretty obvious, but it would be very helpful for you to establish a budget. There are tons of resources out there nowadays. There are many user-friendly apps and websites that can help you do this. If that's not your style, you can also enlist the help of somebody, a financial professional, or even just a knowledgeable friend or family member. YouTube also has a lot of resources. There are great podcasts on this. There are many, many places that can help you understand the best way to create a budget. Ideally, you would want to know what your monthly expenses and income are so that you can figure out what you are left with and how that should be divided between necessary expenses, leisure, and saving. Now, given that you have ADHD, you may also want to set aside discrete chunks of time for you to work on your budget each month, meaning schedule it into your calendar, set a reminder, and use that time only for that purpose. So, for instance, before you get paid, you might want to set aside a time to look at the month ahead and determine if there's anything different that you need to adjust in your budget, anything that you need to consider. And then from there, you can make a plan and a budget for the month rather than just impulsively paying whatever seems most important at that moment. When it comes to recurring bills, I'd very much encourage you to use autopay so that you can take the variability and guesswork out of paying bills. And if you're concerned about, when exactly these bills would be deducted from your account, be sure to have a look at their website or whatever the financial portal is for the given expense, because a lot of times they have an option to move the withdrawal date. So you can move it to, say, the 31st instead of the 25th or something like that if you don't have money by the 25th in the month. And then when it comes to purchasing non-essential items, if you find that you are impulsively buying items and then later regretting your choices, it could be very helpful to implement a waiting period. Interestingly, my wife wasn't aware that I was working on this question for the podcast this week, but she spontaneously came into my office earlier and randomly said that she's been trying to use a new system where she waits for a period of time that's equivalent to the purchase price of whatever she wants to buy, right? So, for example, let's say she wanted to buy a cute mug that was like $30 that she saw on Instagram. That means she would need to wait at least 30 minutes before going through with the purchase. And I like that because it's a really simple rule of thumb that allows you to get some distance and space from that initial emotion that prompted the urge to buy. And for small things that would only require a period of 10 minutes or so, it's not too big of a deal, right? If that doesn't make you not want to buy it, then you're only out $10. But as the value of that item increases, so does the waiting period. So if you're trying to buy something for $300, it means you got to wait 300 minutes. And that's a lot of time for you to kind of really consider whether it's the best idea or not. So whether you use this rule of thumb or give yourself another way to make that sort of pause, the concept remains the same. If it's important enough for you to buy, it will still be important after an hour or after a day or after 2 days. So it's just one way to combat that false sense of urgency and maybe some of the impulsivity that would otherwise drive you to buy something. Another thing that you can do is limit your exposure to advertisements and marketing emails and easy channels for buying things. For example, maybe you want to remove apps like Uber Eats or Amazon from your phone and instead opt to go on the computer if you really need to buy something from there. And on that note, with the computer, I would encourage you to not keep your username and password saved on those sites. So you actually have to log in, you actually have to make that effort and decide, okay, I'm actually going to do this thing. Not like, oops, I slipped and fell and pressed a button and now I have a, Uber Eats order on the way. Now, aside from these actionable tips and tricks, there's also accountability. You may want to focus on accountability. You said you don't have a whole lot of support, but maybe there are some people in your life, loved ones, that you can talk to about the issue that you're having and the goals that you have for spending and get them to be on your side and be honest with you about your behaviors. If not, there's also support groups online and communities online that are focused on issues like overspending or shopping addiction. And that's a place that you can potentially find some empathy and accountability. I would also encourage you to journal and use whatever form of tracking works well for you to help identify, are there common times that you're at a higher risk of overspending? Maybe there's certain times of the month or the week that are at that higher risk. Or maybe there are certain emotional triggers that cause you to spend when you're sad or when you're, too happy and feeling too confident, anything like that. This self-awareness can be a protective factor that helps you from falling into the same traps over and over again. And then, of course, for some people that have issues around money, there is a deeper root. Maybe it has to do with the way that you were raised or things you've experienced in your life up to this point. And if that's the case for you, I would encourage you to seek out psychological help to look into the origins of these patterns. Also, keep in mind, the goal here is not to stop you from spending any money. Instead, it's to help you spend your money in a more sustainable way. And if you're able to institute a better budget, it could be that you're able to actually save money. And then you can spend that money in a way that's more meaningful, right? So if instead of, buying Uber Eats every night and wasting a bunch of money during the month, you're able to save that money, maybe you could treat yourself to a trip or a new electronic device or some clothes. These goals and reinforcements can help you recognize the power of gaining control over your spending. So I think it could work out for you. And I hope that these thoughts are helpful. You're not alone in these struggles. And I hope that you can employ some of these strategies to, just get on better terms with your spending. So best of luck to you. And to everybody listening, thank you. This is the end of the episode. It has been episode 372 of the Hardcore Self-Help Podcast. If you want the full show notes, go to duffthepsych.com/episode 372. And if you want to send me any questions, send it to duffthepsych@gmail.com. Take care of yourselves. I'm going to go enjoy my birthday now, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye.